What's up, guys? I'm SaltEMike, and this is your Star Citizen Week in Review for December 7th, 2020. If this is your first week in review, basically it is where I take all the official news from Star Citizen for the week, pile it into one video, and insert my opinions there. So if you guys do enjoy this series, do enjoy these videos, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe below, and leave a comment on anything that we shared today. Also, I live stream on Twitch every day, but Monday to get you this video out today, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/SaltEMike. All right, we got a lot to get through today, so let's jump into the video. Starting out with patch notes updates. As most of you guys know, I am a member of the Evocati test flight, which is a NDA, under NDA or closed testing phase of Star Citizen. So that is 3.12 right now. 3.12 is in Evocati, so I cannot discuss any of my experiences there or anything. So I'm just going to let you know that it's in Evo. So 3.12 is progressing and it's moving on its way to an open PTU patch where we can discuss it. Moving on to roadmap updates. This is pretty short this week for roadmap Roundup. Basically, they had three things that moved into polishing: the Bearing FS9 LMG, the Gemini A03 sniper rifle, and vehicle entry identification, which is just, I think, a little, based on the picture, it's a little icon of where you can enter your ships, because it's not always obvious for people. Moving on to Reddit roadmap updates from Odysseus Ithaca. Basically, there were major improvements across the board the entire week for 3.12. Spacescaping is 3/4 of the way through after getting 26% in the past week. Refinery decks are at 93% done, and this is the art side of refinery decks, of course. Reputation had a minor gain of 8%, but it looks like it's going to make it into the patch since there's only one task left to complete. Station-based refining, this is the actual functionality of the refinery decks, is the only thing that lost progress this week, but it was just 2%. So hopefully we see that functioning in 3.12. The tractor beam attachment is going well. We'll talk more about this in the video updates section of the show for sure. Elevator panels, guys, it's happening. All right, it's 94% complete. We never have to see this thing on the roadmap again. Talon ships are both gaining 28% progress and are at 80% completion. Moving on to video updates, this is going to be the meat of today's show, starting out with Inside Star Citizen. They start out with a Perseus featurette. There isn't a lot here that we already haven't heard about the ship, so I just want to share a couple clips, but this clip in particular to showcase their design of what fleets are and like kind of how they envision them to be composed.
A fleet in Star Citizen is sort of built around a capital ship, or capital ships as its core. So you have the Javelin, which is a destroyer, so that is designed for really duking it out with other big capital ships. You have the Idris, which is a carrier, so can sort of take on other big ships. It's got a big railgun on the front, but primarily it's there to deliver fighters. And then you have the Polaris, which is a long-range torpedo boat. And you have the Hammerhead, which is a great anti-fighter screen. But what we're missing is this hybrid role that sits between the Hammerhead and the Polaris, that is your fleet defense ship, that is moderately large size and capable of dishing out firepower to deal with large ship threats that aren't quite capital ships.
I find it interesting how they're building this large lineup of military ships. They seem to make sense, but I'm not buying the only thing missing comment. Was a ship like the Perseus. I think when the next big sale comes around, I'm sure they will continue to drum up some idea of, you know, and slide some ship in between others to fill some role that they magically just make up. Next, they talk about how the Perseus got to a 6-man crew, which is honestly might be its largest selling point.
So originally the brief for the ship was a real skeleton crew of 4-man. So you had the pilot, the captain, and the 2 turret gunners. But as we developed the ship, it sort of felt a bit odd that such a small crew was operating such a relatively large ship. So the crew size for the ship is 6-man. That gives you a pilot, captain, 2 manned turret guns because the S7 twin turrets are manned, and then it leaves you with these 2 extra roles that are really flexible in terms of what you want them to do.
Given CIG wanted to start with a 4-man crew, I think it shows that they're hearing the issues people have with these larger ships from the player base. People don't have 20 friends to crew some of these ships, and they want to experience larger ship or capital ship style gameplay. I find it a little weird that on a ship this size that an engineer or a navigator isn't like a designated essential role, but I think it's pretty obvious that that's what the other two roles might end up being. Certainly an engineer type, I would imagine. They did give a vague description on the interior as well, but it wasn't committing to very much, as I imagine the ship isn't going to be in production anytime soon. So we'll move on to the next featurette, which was tractor beams.
The best kind of like test ground for us was to start small and with the multi-tool. This was an attachment that we wanted to add for a while now. This attachment essentially is kind of graded to lift smaller objects, so cargo crates and such. You're able to lift them up, you're able to move them closer, you're able to move them further away. You can rotate them if you want to place them, accurately inside your ship or otherwise.
I'm loving this. This little tool opens up a world of possibilities of gameplay and little fun things that can happen. What I also like is the fact that they really don't have an excuse to add tractor beams to ships now, as long as they have the same functionality that this little tool does, moving cargo boxes, things like that. I think there's going to be a lot more work that needs to happen to slow ships down or stop them from spinning, or any larger objects like an asteroid or rocks, things like that. But it would be really cool to see the tractor beams on ships that tractor beams are supposed to be on. Also note, they were not just moving what I would call mission-size boxes, the boxes that your player held. They were moving large 1 SCU size boxes, so this opens more cargo gameplay and piracy as well. I also want to note that the glow around the box that you're grabbing is green. But when you were holding it and swinging it around, there was one little clip that passed by really fast that I think a lot of you guys probably would have missed, that you might lose your grip because it turned red around it, which was pretty neat. With that said, there's some limitations to the attachment, and they share this quick clip here about some of those.
You can use them in gravity. Obviously, the higher the gravitational environment you're in, the heavier the object becomes, and the more the multi-tool might struggle. At the moment, we're tuning it, but it's graded to lift up to about 250 kilograms, so most of the cargo crates on your ship, it should be possible to lift up.
Okay, so gravity plays a factor, which is cool, and the weight limitation is really important to know, and it makes the tool good, but not so amazing that you wouldn't use a ship-based tractor beam, right? So I think that that's kind of cool. Next, we get a clip that shows the tool's unintended or unexpected function, for me at least.
There is a second function to it too, so if you start targeting large and massive objects like ships that you wouldn't necessarily be able to pull with this thing because it's so small, its secondary use is more like a grapple hook almost. You essentially start pulling yourselves towards these massive objects in 0G faster than your EVA pack should be able to take you. It's the Spider-Man tool.
Wow, this is going to be a ton of fun. Everyone wanted salvage way before this, but I get massive hard space shipbreaker vibes if you guys have ever played that game. Moving around destroyed and derelict ships is going to be a lot of fun with this tool. What unexpected use do you guys plan on using? I think hard space shipbreaker and salvage. What do you guys kind of see when you saw the almost Spider-Man-like functionality of this thing? Next, we had a Star Citizen Live, and this is a pretty big one with a lot of information to share here, so we're going to jump into it. It was a ship Q&A, which was really focused on the ships that we have currently in a lot of cases, and what questions people had about them. So they started out with the Mercury and Nomad's fuel consumption. Was this intended?
The short answer is that was not intended. That was more harsh on the fuel than we had anticipated, so that's been fixed for 312, so they're back to a norm, what should have been the norm for their release, and it sort of spurred some further discussions for future star systems, because at the moment all the fuel is balanced around what's in Stanton to give the best gameplay there, but when we go to other systems such as Pyro, there is significantly less opportunity to refuel. So we're having discussions right now, people like Todd and Tony, to go over, right, what's the range time that we're gonna support here, and then we'll be balancing the ships around that, but we want to move to a more future-proof system where the idea is not to be like you've only got 40 minutes of fuel, so make your best of it. We're talking like an hour, 2, 3, 4 is your default range.
All right, this is good news to hear. The idea that, you know, the way these came in was not fun. It was anti-fun, and there was no way that this was not going to be balanced in the future, in my opinion, but there was a lot of talk around the fact that this was intended, and it clearly wasn't. The Constellation update. The Star Runner is so far ahead of it right now. Are they going to do any update for it?
A few things. So 3.12, it's had a fairly comprehensive rebalance pass in terms of its handling, because it was absolutely not handling where we wanted it to handle. I know it's got some much fabled shield holes on there that ultimately will get fixed by SDF shields, and every ship that has these shield holes will get fixed by that as well.
Another exciting thing to hear. I'm not a fan of the Connie personally, but quite a few people here have them, and you know, the way they just fly it just made it so difficult to use in so many functions in the game. The next thing is, why don't they fix old ships, and why are they always making new ones?
I would much rather work on new ships or ships that we've promised and not delivered yet than rework a ship 4 times that someone's already got, especially if it functions and it does its role. I would much rather put the team's effort into delivering some of the community favorites.
All right, this was an important clip here, and it was kind of the theme of the show. The fact that your ship that you paid for and are flying functions and will eventually get an update, whether it's an art update or a more functionality update. These guys have to deliver a game. Like this thing cannot be reiterated enough. They have to deliver a game. New ships had new functionality that is intended for Star Citizen, and I think people just get more frustrated with the straight to flyable ships, where these are new ships that were never promised as mentioned in this clip, and when I don't have my promised ship or my flyable ship is just not up to par, that's where that frustration tends to come from. So I think the question was answered here, but I also think that it's more of a straight to flyable ship issue and not why does my ship stink and you're making new ships. Like, the promised ships obviously make sense to make. Another thing is back to why old ships don't get reworks. This logic for me was interesting, to say the least.
They do have some issues at the moment, but those ships are definitely not underplayed. We look at the stats regularly, both from an ownership and a playtime and the combat ones and the mission completion ones, and that again, that would tie into one of the future questions about what triggers a rework. But for their issues, they are certainly not being ignored, both internally by us and by players.
I find this logic to be incredibly flawed. The fact that people are flying the ships doesn't mean that they're working, right? So ships that have been sold for longer or that are available on the website for longer periods of time, other than limited ships, things like that, they're going to be more used, right? More people are going to own them, more people are going to use them. So basing stats off what people use and what people complete missions with doesn't necessarily mean that the ship is up to par with other ships that are successful. People use it because they don't want to spend the extra money for the new, more expensive ship, or they don't want to spend the 10, 15, 20 hours in game to get the one that works. So I just think that was kind of flawed logic. What about a visual? Like, what about from a visual standpoint for reworks? There's a clip about that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, like, visually with the ships as well, I think we've got quite a diverse range of manufacturers, and that can mean that not every manufacturer necessarily has to have the same aesthetics, but they should all match the same visual quality, and there's definitely ships that haven't been touched in a while, and there's no getting away from that. As a team progresses, technology progresses, as our pipeline progresses, we always try and learn from the last ship. If we didn't, we'd be stupid.
There are kind of two things at play here. One is that most games don't operate a live environment in the middle of their development.
Yeah.
So this process of building ships, in each successive one, learning from the lessons of the other one and getting better as you go along, is a normal aspect of game development. That's not just normal. It's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to get better at this as you go along. It's just that for most normal games, that period where you go back and you bring everything else up to quality happens behind closed doors. When the game releases, they just, hopefully, if everything works the way it's supposed to, you see everything at the same quality at the same time.
Can't argue this. Obviously, they have to come back to it eventually. But raging about them not doing it now, guys, like that stuff is just weird to me. Obviously, they're gonna have to come back and update these. I don't think they were just going to put it out there and sell it and then never update it to use proper door functionality like the Mercury Star Runner, things like that, right? It's just silly. Next is, how are ships chosen to be working on, whether they're new or old?
Anyone that has like a vested interest in a vehicle coming out into the game, and we sit down and we look at the backlog of ships and go, right, what ships do we want to release next year? What is going to add to the game? And we give our, these are our top 5, and then we go and see whether there's any consistencies there, and that usually pulls out a few, and then I go away and work with the production and go, right, you can only have one of these, because this is a big ship. This is going to take all of next, you can have this ship, but that's the only ship you're going to get next year. And I go, well, I don't want that. So then we go backwards and forwards, and we spend a few weeks going, we want this one, and we'll have these two, these will fit. We have this event at this date that needs this ship for it because of X reason. So that has to go in. And if we have any time left over, then it's sort of internal team choice of, we have a 4-month period. So are there any small little ships that we want to squeeze in there, or do we want to look at doing a rework of a ship?
Awesome insights here. The next thing was the Banu Merchantman update that you don't want to hear.
It's in concept again. Anyone that's a BMM fan knows that the concepts were quite different depending on which version you saw. So it's bringing them all in line, making everything fit in it. It has got bigger, but it is not gone up a landing pad size, so it's still in the same size category. It still has the same amount of cargo as it was concepted with, so we've not cut the cargo, and we're working on the interior to bring all the stuff we learned from the Defender inside.
Concepts for the interior.
Interior. Concept.
And folks, as far as when you can expect to see that, I would say when the Banu Merchantman actually begins active development, when things actually start being built, is probably the next time you can expect to see some of that stuff. So
that's going to be a big one. It's going to be
it's not going to be soon.
Around CitizenCon 2019, it was Carrack is being worked on, then the Banu Merchantman. So I don't know what's changed, but obviously we're not going to see this thing anytime soon, and that is pretty disappointing because that really is one of the longest sold ships that hasn't really seen that much love or being put into production. So it's kind of disappointing. But with that said, we're going to move into the quick takes from the show that I didn't think made sense to clip out. So the Starfarer is going to get a rework to fit all the new updates that the newer ships have, like we mentioned earlier. The Star Runner only having one exit was 100% an oversight. They will resolve this. The 600i interior had a concept artist look at it and try to come up with a plan to fix its weird interior right now, but no plans on when that will actually happen. Carrack armored cockpit is planned, but no point in working on it until armor is brought to the game. Same with the jump point scanning antenna. Same with the underside as well. Those are modules that will come out and have different functionality. So Retaliator will get those modules first, and then we'll see them come to other ships in the future. Tachyon cannons will not come on agile ships. They saw that the fact that it was on an agile ship like the Defender made it too overpowered. They will be added to larger, less maneuverable ships in the future. Banu Merchantman, probably. The Super Hornet is not where they want it to be. They will fix this issue and get the shields where they want it. That's where they thought the issue was. For me, it's actually kind of its flight. I think it can be a bit more maneuverable, especially in atmosphere. Armor is still just a damage modifier. It will not be a thing until physical-based damage comes in, which is currently being worked on, but there's no timeline for when that will be complete. Carrick, which does not have a medbay, will get one. That was likely an oversight as well. Building blocks will help save our MFD settings for the future play sessions in our ships, but this is not the only blocker from us getting that functionality. They might have a fix for the cockpit opening bug that constantly happens now. They're working on it. They had one for 3.12, but it had an issue, so they're hopefully going to have it before 3.12 hits the PTU or live. The Redeemer is in white box right now. We'll kind of see something on that in a little bit. The Polaris is slightly bigger, and it's basically got bigger just to fit the right ships in its hangar. Whew. So that was SCL. Quite a bit of information there. Really good SCL this week, and yeah, looking forward to new ones. I think he mentioned this is the final SCL, so I think we might get a Calling All Devs next week. Moving on to other updates. This was actually usually the most filled, and this was the least filled this time. We had the Best in Show ship skins are now getting distributed to you. There was a lore post for a weapons manufacturer. Sneak peek, which is most definitely the Redeemer. The 4 circular things at the top really give it away. The Galactapedia stuff there was a lot of stuff here. There's quite a few entries. Link will always be in the description for these things. Check out the Red Festival. It hints at an in-game event that we had last year, and I expect for it to continue in the next year. I wonder if they tie it into things like Reputation and make it a little bit more, I don't know, in-depth. So the last thing that we'll touch on for this video is we had a launcher update, which basically means that you can't use some older CPUs now at this point for the game, but like really old CPUs, which most likely couldn't run the game anyway. So yeah, no big deal there. But yeah, guys, that's it for the video. So thank you so much for watching this week. Make sure you hit that like button. It really does help us with the algorithm. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and leave a comment below on anything that we discussed here this week. Coming up in the future, I plan on doing a year-end review. Answer the calls. Yesterday's Answer the Call was about cargo hauling. It was really fun, so make sure you guys check that out. Future Answer the Calls are going to be, like what you expect from 3.12, things like that. But guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you all next week. Bye, everybody.